You're watching a David Game Let's Play.
Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm David Game and here I'm talking about Tales of Zestiria. I'm playing it on the PlayStation 4, it's also available on the PlayStation 3. And I just wanted to give you a few impressions because as a long-time Tales fan, I have very mixed feelings about the game. Now, I'm not quite ready to give it a review just yet because I'm not done with it. This footage was taken about halfway through the game. I'm a little bit further than I was here, but I just opened this area up. I thought, warning, spoilers, you're gonna see characters do stuff that you probably haven't seen them do yet if you're not that far into it. Really, it's not that big of a deal. Honestly, no major narrative plot points they don't really come into what's happening here. It's just kind of basic knowledge as you go through. It's not a revelation by any means. Anyway, so Tales of Zestiria. It started off, I was really interested, very disappointed that the opening song's vocals weren't there. I went and checked out the Japanese opening afterwards and that was really good, so I was kind of curious. I imagine it's some sort of licensing issue. But then I played the game, and from the very get-go, I was like, this feels different. Like, I can't put my finger on it right now. At that point in time, I was like, there's something about it that I'm not quite sure of. And then there are parts of the game that impressed me. They're the wider open areas, the vastly shorter loading screens. I mean, I gave Zillia 2, or Exilia, however you want to pronounce it, I gave that a 9. And I regret that, because that game is not a 9. I really enjoyed it, but it's not a 9 by any stretch of the imagination, in my opinion. Now, the numbers are arbitrary, but, you know, if I had to put my genuine opinion on it, it's probably an 8. I did enjoy the game. It was better than Tales of Zestiria 1, but not by a long stretch, and ultimately, you know, that was my major folly. So I came to this game already with like a heavy critique to an extent. I was really looking forward to it. I love the Tales games, but I thought, okay, this game, when they said it's going to be on PS3 and PS4, I was like, oh cool, they're doing PS4. You know, it's going to be hampered by the PS3 limitations. Okay, so I played the game, and the open areas are quite impressive. They're a bit bland in terms of like how many enemies are there, but they respawn quite often, so you haven't got to worry too much about it. But the combat, like learning the arts, is a bit weird. There's no clear-cut way, like there was in Zillia, like there was in Vesperia, to acquire them and to level up for a meaningful purpose. It seems more automated than it was, but in other ways it's not as well automated. Now, I could be misremembering, but I do believe in the older games you could assign characters to use stuff like life battles. If somebody was killed in battle, like KO'd in battle, you could assign them to do the life battle, so you didn't have to pause and do it yourself. Well, now it seems like you kind of can't do that, and I might be misremembering. Please, like, you know, inform me down in the comments if you know that didn't ever happen and I'm thinking of another game. But as far as I'm aware, you used to be able to assign a greater variety of tactics, and it just isn't the case with this game. Now, again, the combat's still fantastic, and the way you go into the combat area on the field rather than transition into a field of battle fully, that's something I really enjoyed, because it really stops, you know, in the old games with the loading screens between battles, the flow kind of got broken, and that's why I've never really understood why the obsession with turn-based JRPGs and whatnot is such a big deal. I love Persona, but I do wish that I'd transition into battle and transition straight out without those loading screens. And Persona's, you know, a whole other thing. Anyway, Tales of does that really well this time around in Zestiria, but again, there's just some really glaring issues with some of the stuff in terms of like what's getting to me, the narrative. It's really dire. Like, I understand the situation in the game demands it to be dire a little bit, but, you know, come on, lighten up a little bit. And it's a weird juxtaposition as well, because it'll be dire, but the characters will be overly cheery about it, and then they'll be overly depressing. And, I mean, if it weren't for the skits, which the Tales of games are famous for, the skits are still brilliant. Even though the characters in this are far less diverse than previous games, especially after Zestiria. Zestiria had some really good characters, and they were very diverse, and in this, not so much. They are a little more tropey. The best one for me is Rose so far. Sorry sounds like an R&B singer that's trying to apologise. I'm sorry. But other than that, he's fine. Edna's brilliant. But again, from a design point, from like a characterization point, they're all very similar to each other. And that's kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And another part that's really rubbed me the wrong way is the way the battle system works in relation to who you can have in your loadout. You have 2 human characters, and the rest of the characters are what they call seraphim. And these seraphim are, they are spiritual beings that can live inside of you as a vessel and whatnot, and as the shepherd, and it's all, you know, you'll play the game, you'll figure that out. But the point is that while you're playing it, you can only be attached, like, you can only bring in 1 human and 1 seraphim, but there's only... yeah, I'm not going to get too deep into all that because it can be spoiler territory, even though that bit for me really did come recently, and that was a bit of a pain. I know I'm being overly negative, but I don't think I'm being overly negative. I think the game is fundamentally different from what I was hoping to see from a Tales game, and while there are some improvements, and they are good improvements, there's a few steps back. The cooking system, well, there isn't one. There are passive skills, and some of the passive skills are really good actually, but one of them is like to remake treats you found and whatnot, and I'm like, well, and half of them don't do any of the good cooking stuff that you're used to, and you can get the relatively typical ones from the inn, but you only get them for a set amount of battles. Honestly, go back to the Tales of Zestiria cooking system, please. Or, you know, even Zestiria, where you could consume something to 50% up your XP and all that. It just, do something like that, please. But the biggest issue for me is the lack of clarity in the tactical system. It's a deep system. It's a deeper system than it's ever been, and it's too much. Not too much for me to handle, not too much for anyone to handle if they take the time, but it's kind of the antithesis of what Tales does. For me, personally, Tales was a game that it had a deep simplicity to it. Like, the action combat has always interested me, and I like pulling off the combos, but you can't map those to your right stick anymore. So, unless I'm missing something, again, if I'm wrong, please tell me, but as far as I can see, because you're controlling the camera mostly with the right stick, you don't map those skills to it. And I used to use the right stick for like all of my skill chaining, and again, the skill chaining's different now, because in a way it's better because you can hold a standard art and evolve it into the higher art afterwards, and that's all well and good, but it just doesn't work in the same way that the old games did. And that might work for you, it might not, and it just doesn't gel with me, and I don't feel like I'm stuck in the past. I feel that they were already on to a really winning formula with Zestiria. And then they did some interesting things with the future games, but they weren't as good as like the final slash system in Zestiria, where you could get the one-hit kill and increase the drop rate, or increase the XP, or increase the gold. It really let you play the way you wanted to. And Zestiria is just not doing that for me, and while I'm enjoying what I'm playing, and make no mistake about it, I'm enjoying it, but I'm a fan of the series. And if someone came to me and said, should I start here? I'd be like, well, if the PS4 is the only thing you've got, yes. If you've got an Xbox 360, you better go and get Zestiria, and you'll see, like, the pinnacle, in my opinion. Although I know other people have other games that they're severely attached to. Severely? No, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Extremely attached to. And, you know, more power to you. But for me, Zestiria was the one that really brought me in. And Grace Zeth and Zestiria, both of the games, they did a really good job of iterating on Zestiria, but they kind of cut some stuff out that I enjoyed and I wish they hadn't done. And the game's really surviving on its, you know, anime roots, as well as the skit system, the game is surviving on its core gameplay, and for me, it's become what I said it to my friend the other day. It's the JRPG Destiny to me. There's a lot wrong with it, but I'm really enjoying the core of what it is, and that creates problems for me, because I really wanted this to be fantastic, and to be honest, it's only good. Now that might change, and maybe the narrative will improve. The visuals aren't going to improve, but the visuals are fine. They're not bad. They're looking a bit dated, so I'm hoping that the new one, what is it, Bestilia, whatever they're working on now, I really hope that turns out to be like the next step in this. They've cut the loading screens down. I want to see them, if they're going to stay with this approach and not give us back the world map to explore, then that's fine. Please do away with the loading screens entirely. Try to aim for that. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I do really enjoy this game, but as somebody that's a fan of something, and you have to be a critic as well, you got to review stuff, you really need to be able to see through your fandom and understand that sometimes things don't live up to what you hoped they would be, and they don't live up to their predecessors. And in many ways, Tales of Zestiria is an advancement, but in just as many ways, in my opinion, it's a step back. Here's hoping that changes. The game has got better as I've played. Maybe it'll be something better by the time I'm finished. But until then, there'll be no review until I'm done with it. I'm going to get back to work on it. Thank you for watching, and of course, as usual, tune into My Games Lounge for all of my content. Check out my YouTube channel, SkipByDG, and that's about it. I really had no structure for the ending of this. Actually, I didn't have any script for any of it, that's why I've rambled. Thank you for listening. Bizzle.
I will smite evil!
Words will make you vulnerable.
Yeah! Be gone!
Don't fight.
Strike! It's over! Be gone! Strike!